Hello, my name's Tom Cahill. It's the 22nd of February 2014. I'm just going to make a quick video about Tony Farrel. Tony Farrel, who's a disinformation agent who I became aware of the very, very first time I saw him speak. I'm absolutely amazed that anybody's taken him by him. Admittedly, he wasn't quite as good at his play acting the first time I saw him, because he hadn't made any videos or anything, and he'd been announced as somebody who'd just had to leave the police. But it wasn't quite, they didn't have the story down to such a good pat at the time. He just had to be forced out of the police because he'd made an intelligence report which they didn't like, or something along those lines, or he refused to do the report. Now, I saw him at in London at there's this sort of pub with a conference centre in it inside what do you call it, St Pancras Station in London. That's King's Cross, St Pancras. So anyway, I saw this guy, this Farrel character, and he was doing a talk. And the thing was, this is where it sort of slightly went wrong. He's got this thing where he keeps going on about, and I think that because I'm a Christian and all this stuff, and he keeps saying it, and you can't think. It's a bit like when somebody says, to be honest, or I'm not trying to pass the buck, and they keep saying it. You know they're going to try to pass the buck, or be honest, and they're not being honest, or do you believe me? I hope you believe me. Any of these things, it was obvious that he isn't a Christian at all, and otherwise he wouldn't have to keep saying, because I'm a Christian. Like, this is the thing, he kept saying all these things, but more importantly than that, he actually said certain things that kind of contradicted themselves. And the other thing, he said something about his position might change in the future. He sort of said, but my position on that might change at any time. And you're like, well, why would your position change at any time? It was very, very strange. So he just said things, and it was quite clear he was giving tells about what his, what his pre-agreed plan of what his action, pre-agreed plan of action, obviously would have potential changes in it depending on what people caught on with about him. And he was announcing it when he was doing this talk, and I pulled him on it, and he couldn't explain himself. He's obviously a liar. The other thing I've noticed with this Tony Farrel is he hangs around with other disinformation agents, and he also, I don't think Nick Colostrom is a disinformation agent, by the way. I think he's a sort of national treasure. That's my current opinion of him, anyway. And he's just got some kind of, learning inconsistency, as in he can understand some things very well, and other things he can't really understand at all. And he's just never going to learn because he's getting on now. You know what I mean? So that's what my understanding of him is. But I reckon that the fact that Farrel has been set on Nick Colostrom to make him look like an idiot and doing ridiculous videos with him, which Nick Colostrom, you know what I think it is? He's basically too stupid to realise that he's been set up to be made a fool of. Is evidence that, Nick isn't a bad one, because otherwise why would they be sending people to try and make a fool of him? Do you see what I mean? It doesn't really make logical sense, because generally disinformation agents won't attack each other, and that's one of the ways you can tell who they are, because if you know one person is and other people aren't attacking them when they should be, because any right-minded person who is interested in what was going on would, who knows to. You see, it's a very good lying tell. It's a good way of knowing. And the other thing is, a lot of these people, though, they will, if you confront them in private and say, what about that guy, why do you have anything to do him, or what about that woman, they'll say all their bad news, and but they'll never do it publicly. So it's like they'll do it on an individual basis, or between 2 or 3 people who are saying it. They go, well, I've got my doubts, but I just don't want to cause any trouble, and I've just got to look after the thing that I'm dealing with, so I'm not going to cause any problems. But of course, you see, that's not an excuse, because the whole point is, it doesn't matter if you're dealing with different things. If you've got some involvement with someone and you know that they're a liar and that they're a cheat and they're spending their time trying to subvert people's attention or waste their time, then obviously you would realise that is something that you've got to pay attention to. You see what I mean? It doesn't make any sense that you wouldn't. They go, I don't want them to turn other people against me, or any stupid stuff like that. If the truth stands on its own, it doesn't need to be propped up by bullshit. So if you've got a good, if you know someone's bad and you can explain why you know they are, that's it. Anyone worth having as a kind of support of any type, they understand that it's an indisputable fact as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, that's how I consider, a good way of finding these people out, because he's not the only one knocking around. I'd say 9 out of 10 plus of the people who who operate in Britain anyway, and kind of do lots of videos, and they kind of have got a following. The only way they get a kind of following is because you've got these people effectively are lazy. Well, maybe lazy, that's a bit of I can't really think of a better word. They find one person and they then think that they've got all the answers, or a group of people, and they just keep following that same group around. So the thing just gets, they end up propping each other up. The disinformation agents prop each other up. That's what happens. So you listen to one person, that puts you in touch with another person. But you see, the thing is, these aren't incidental relationships. They've all been planned. You see, because all the disinformation people, are all sort of working in collaboration with each other. But anyway, the other thing that I happen to have noticed about this Tony Farrel is, obviously, he had a lot to do with Belinda Mackenzie. Now he's also set up some kind of thing to do with Mackenzie's friends with Belinda Mackenzie. Belinda Mackenzie's a criminal. She set up Iran Aid, stole all the money out of it. Surprise, surprise, the police, despite knowing it was definitely a fraud, didn't do anything. So that's quite clearly, she obviously has some kind of association with or protection from the government. It doesn't prove she works for the government, but it does prove she's working for someone who the government is protecting at the very minimum. So if anyone who hangs around with a known criminal like Belinda Mackenzie, they've got to be suspect. I know a lot of people seem to get a bit tricked by her, as in they think she's good, and then they get stuck in this mindset, and it's very difficult for them to get out of it. She seems to brainwash people quite. That's what it seems to be she's doing. Somehow she seems to be almost like a witch. She's putting spells on them. But anyway, this is the other thing with this Tony Farrel. He keeps going on about, I'm a Christian. Right? Yeah, he's got this great big honking nose. He looks like he's a Jew, doesn't he? I mean, do you think he's a Jew? I think he probably is. I think most of these disinformation agents, when it comes down to it, they're either agents of Jews or they are Jews. I don't know what it is about it, because, of course, a lot of them work for the government, but the government isn't necessarily, you know what I mean? You don't think of MI5 agents and think they're all Jews. I certainly wouldn't think that. But the point is that lots of these disinformation people do seem to be. And if you look at things like lots of these cases in America where they've had these false flag terrorism events and stuff, like the Boston bombing, or not non-bombing, the Boston non-bombing, the Boston pretend false flag, the Boston hoax. All the people involved with that, most of them were Jews. The ones who were claiming, getting all this compensation payouts and all that, most of them are Jews. So if you look into that, it's an interesting anomaly. I don't really understand why they use Jews. Maybe it's just because, I don't know. I don't know why they use Jews. But Tony Farrel, to me, said he's a Christian too many times. Looks like a Jew. Yeah, I think he's a Jew. That's what I think he is. And I think also they've proven now that he was getting paid by the police, wasn't he? Something like that, I don't know. Either way, not very important. Now, one other thing that he's linked to is obviously Ian R. Crane. Now, Ian R. Crane was flagged up to me in the past, and people said, look, he's mad keen on getting money for everything. Like, he was selling CDs, DVDs of films that he just downloaded off the internet, and there were other people's, and he was just selling them for a few pounds each or something. He was just mad for charging people lots of money for talks and stuff like that. Well, again, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to criticise him for that. There's a lot of people who get very funny about somebody charging what really isn't a lot of money for something that they've organised, and it's like, well, if they spend a lot of time researching and stuff, I don't see the harm. But the point is, whereas I've never got any smoking gun with him, he doesn't ever really expose anything to do with disinformation. So I think with him, you've got to couple that with the fact he never mentions a Jewish hand in anything. You add the two together, I think he's got to be a baddie. I think he has got to be, because, I mean, too many things don't add up, and he's also got a following. If he's got a following, the chances are he's controlled opposition, and he'd be paid, and he'd be getting paid by them in one way or another, which could be that they allow him to do things like tax fraud or something, and he just gets away with it. That's the kind, but it's probably more than that. As I said, with all these people that you see, right, I can tell just by looking at them nowadays to a very, very high degree of certainty whether they're disinformation people or not. The truth is, right, it's like this. If you're interested in the truth and making sure, things go above board and everything's not snidey and below board, as a lot of these things are, if you find somebody and they're lying constantly and making up false, giving disinformation out and stuff, you'll immediately reject anything to do with them. That's the standard way of behaving. But when people don't do that, to me, it just basically proves that they're working for the opposition. That's what it means. And any silly excuses about not wanting to have to deal with other people's problems as a result of them falling out, it just does not wash. It does not wash, because the whole point is, if you're going up against the establishment, the corrupt parts of the establishment, if you don't think the whole establishment's very corrupt, and meant to be corrupt, either way, whichever way you're looking at it, you are going up against the establishment. Why would you worry about some plonker who has about 1,000 people who occasionally watch videos that they do or something? It's just not even worth worrying about. So that's the way I think about it. I'd be interested to know what you think. And yeah, please comment. As I said, there's a few people I'm still not decided about. Well, I tell a lie, I am decided. I've decided, like Ian Puddick, disinformation. He's getting that Digimedia to make a film for him. So he's got a sort of Swish website. He had a website before that he admitted Ray Sinclair did for him. Then he got this new one. And then he got, what's he doing? He's now got this film company called Digimedia to make a fancy website for him. And it's an independent sort of indie media, is it? Or indie media. Sorry, and this Indomedia, I don't know. I think they're sponsored by the Rockefeller Foundation or something like that. I forget which one it is, but they're definitely a disinformation controlled opposition outlet. And the thing with them is that they've got they've got his number on the website. So like you've got like a Swish professional outfit doing a film for you. Why would they put your personal phone number on the website? It doesn't make any sense. Now, the thing with Ian Puddick, which made me suspicious about him, was his association with known criminals and disinformation agents, people like Ray Sinclair, and of course then you start finding about other people like Brian Gerrish and stuff also hangs around with him, and he never. The first time I spoke to him, I said Ray Sinclair, and he said, "Oh, actually, he did my website." So he actually told me that, which I thought was a bit strange looking back at it. But the point is, if you're trying to fight corruption and you've got like a known criminal who's like got multiple aliases and is a complete con man, why would you let them do your website? He's a multi-millionaire, Ian Puddick is. Why would you get him to do your website? It makes no sense. Like, if you're a multi-millionaire, you don't give a fuck about paying out 300 or 400 quid to get a kid to do your website for you. You just don't. You wouldn't. If someone offers to do it for free and they're a criminal, you'd say, no, thanks. I don't want anything to do with you. You're a criminal. Simple as that. Now, Ian Puddick is very, very keen to hear from you the first time you try and get in touch with him. Very, very keen. Very keen. He'll speak to you, for about an hour, something like that. Try and get in touch with him after that. He wants to know what your interest in his case is and what you're doing, because he assumes you'll be doing something. And then after that, if you try and get in touch with him, he's very, very hard to get hold of. Or he'd be very much like basically just fobs you off, and he never gives you any actual information about his case other than verbal information. So what he's trying to do is he's sucking information out of people, I believe. So he's trying to track people down, suck information out of them, and then probably report on them and compile lists. It's a bit like Tommy Doherty, in the EDL. He gets all these lists of people, and apparently he gets lists of all his members, and then he decides he's not a white supremacist after all. And he just hands a list over. So they've got a list of all these people and, like all these details on them for the security services. But that's what I think Ian Puddick's doing. Now, this is the other one, right? I hadn't thought this to start off with. I had no thought in this direction. Like with Ian Puddick, I didn't have any thought in this direction at all. But with him, right, I'm not really sure what his game is either, what the actual point of it all is. But there's Michael Doherty, right? Now, as I said, I didn't think any of this to start off with. I had all good hopes for him, but there's various suspect things he did. Like the very, very first time I met him, right, he said to me, "Why don't you just do this stuff all the time?" And I said, "What do you mean, like a job?" Because I was talking to him about something that I was doing, and then he was, because we were at this talk, and I didn't know him, and I was just talking to him. And when I look back at it, I think he thought I was doing the same thing as him. I think he thought, because outwardly we sort of come across quite similar. We don't look a million miles away from each other, and we've both educated, obviously, and clever and clean cut, and not like scruff bags. And I think he probably thought I was somebody like him who was working for whoever he works for. That's what I think he thought. That's what I think he thought, and maybe he thought I was just doing it part time or something. I don't really know how these people get financed, but I think that's what he thought looking back at it. But that's not exactly a smoking gun. I understand. It's just anecdotal. This is just like what I think looking back on it. The point is with him is he goes to court cases, court hearings and stuff. He has all these plonkers turning up saying they're free men on the land, making a complete fool of themselves. And he's not doing anything to do with anything they're talking about. And the thing is, he'll let them go to court cases that the UK column has told people are going to be about commercial liens. Like they're going to do a commercial lien or whatever the fuck they're telling them. And these people turn up, start fucking telling everybody who will listen to them that they're fucking free men on the land, and they know all about the law and all this nonsense, and they're going to arrest judges and stuff, yeah? And when they're doing all that stuff, I say to him, like, "Michael, why don't you just put them straight? Tell them the UK column sent them down there on false pretenses." And he's like, yeah, and he just doesn't do it. So I thought, that's weird, because that's taking advantage of these people. Now, all this, any publicity is good publicity, all that stuff. I understand it to a point, but the point is that, I don't know. I don't think it really holds water. And the other thing is, I think this thing where this clerk has obviously bundled him out of the building, and then they've charged him with assault, and you can see it all on film. I think that's just part of his cover. I mean, I'm not saying he hasn't got a criminal record as a result of it, but the point is, I think it's just a cover to make people think, oh, he's above reproach now, because they've tried to fit him up with something. They're so scared. I don't really buy it. Now, the other thing with him is, as I said, once you start seeing the pattern, you start applying it to people who would have started to be more similar. One of the things that's consistent with him and all the other disinformation agents, if you ever say to him that person's no good, and you can explain why, he's just not interested. He goes, "Oh yeah, well they're not good then, are they?" But he won't go, "Yeah, right, I don't want to have anything to do with them." Again, he won't have someone turning up to his court case because that person's referred him to it and say, "Fuck off," you understand I don't have anything to do with that person because they're a disinformation agent. He won't say that. And of course, you've got to remember that this is worse when you've got people, for instance, the people at the UK column, Mike, the editor, was saying that Michael Doherty was the person who was putting commercial liens on people. He told me that. There's an email chain and everything all to do with this. And I said, hang on a minute, what are you talking about? I know him. He's not doing anything to do with commercial liens. That's rubbish. So you see, I told Michael Doherty they were lying about him. And then at the time, I think I just wrote it off as a misunderstanding. He said, "What? I don't know what you're talking about." And it's like, what do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about? His attitude was like he kind of denied. It was like I copied him into a chain where I said, "You've lied about Michael Doherty. He's not putting on a commercial lien. Why have you said this about him?" And Michael Doherty then got back to the group saying, "I don't know what Tom's talking about." Do you see what I mean? Whereas he should have said, "Yeah, I'm not putting one on. So what are you talking about?" to them. But instead he sort of flipped it. It's kind of like it's a sleight of hand where they kind of, if you're not really paying attention, you just think, no, that's a misunderstanding. And of course, if you've got a misunderstanding and you also got a built-in allegiance to a certain person being a goodie, you won't get it. And of course, that the aim of that is to turn people against me. Do you see what I mean? Now, I saw an email, a very strange email, message on Facebook a while ago on his wall, and it said something about being awarded a load of money to his Justice Now charity, and how this money was was being donated. Now this definitely popped up. I mean, you might think, well, no, you dream that. It never actually happened. You literally saw it in a dream and you just forgot and you thought it was real. And then I thought, no, you can't have done that. Can't be the case, because in a dream you normally see like physical stuff, not something written down on a screen. Well, I don't anyway. So basically, yeah, I'm sure there was a post he put up saying that he got a very large donation, blah blah blah, and it's going to be used for this or that, and then he's taken it down. Some kind of little mind trick, I think. Anyway, but the point is that his financing's always been something that makes people wonder about him, and it's definitely is a very serious, significant thing, and also like his sort of organisational skills, where he gets, if he's meant to be not working and just pursuing his like little cases for all this years. There's no way he'd be getting up at fucking 7 o'clock in the morning and putting stuff on Facebook, because my logic is, if you're dealing with something which requires you talking to people about stuff, finding out about stuff, and doing writing and stuff like that, you're going to often stay up late at night. So you're not going to be getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning and going straight on Facebook. And it wouldn't be consistent every morning. It would be different times. Whereas with him, it's like he's a full-time employee. And it looks like he looks down all of his posts from what he said, and sort of filters every single comment. Now, some of his posts have, more than 100 comments on them. And he put this comment around saying, he put a new post up saying, I've found a new way of deleting irrelevant things that people put on my threads. So, and I thought, well, hang on, that's a bit strange. Well, yeah, right, if someone writes something relevant, it might be slightly irritating, and I know there are a lot of irritating idiots about, but it's a bit pompous to sort of start saying, oh, I'm going to decide to take this off and that off. And you could see a load of people had said to him, yeah, who are you to tell anyone what's relevant and what's not relevant? It's, meant to be free speech. It's a very weird statement he'd said. And then what he's done is, I've written on it, yeah, Michael, whoever's paying you, or whatever your real aims is, or whoever's really paying you, you're not doing yourself any favours writing stupid, pompous things like that. You should think twice before you say silly things like that. And he said, "Oh, you are a troll." So I thought that's a bit strange. And then next thing, he said, "I blocked you," or something like, "I'm going to block you now." That's the end of it. So that to me struck me as a bit strange. Then it turns out, I looked on Facebook with some links about him. I can't remember. I just had a little look, because I've not really looked up anything about him. I've looked for videos in the past and stuff like that. And it turns out this one lady has asked him a question in the past about, was he sacked from his job for being a football hooligan? And he said about 2-3 years ago, yeah, that's me. Then she's brought it up about 2 years later, and he's denied any knowledge of it. And the next thing, he's dealing with this guy called, there's a thread, comments, and there's this guy called Tom, commonly known as Dom. Now, commonly known as Dom is just this fucked up, extremely fucking horrifically ugly guy who's like an abomination. And he's definitely a disinformation agent. And it's like, I mean, further up in the thread where this woman's talking to him, she says, "But I thought you didn't believe in money, but you've got a credit card in your sock." And he said, "Where's your evidence?" Instead of saying, "No, I don't," he says, "Where's your evidence?" So, he's just a horrible creep. And he's sort of trying to stick up for Michael Doherty when this woman's asking about, whether he, was a football hooligan, or was he in the papers or whatever it was for being a football hooligan, and, what's his real game, because there seems to be something not quite right, like as though he's probably, being paid by the state, some kind of agent of some type. So he's got commonly known as Dom as his mate. You see how the whole thing all links up? It's like these people have a sort of modus operandi, which is they try not to let you have anything on them. And in not letting you have anything on them, effectively, you sort of start noticing these patterns in them. Now, all this stuff I would never have noticed years ago. I would never even noticed a year ago. But the point is, these patterns, they're there as bright as day. And you can't really not see them after a while. And it's just as I said, it's a progression. It's not about being clever. It's about learn knowledge. It's a bit like you start noticing, as I said, people who say unnecessary pre-qualification or post-qualification words, like "to be honest," oh, do you trust me, or I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian. People who are Christians don't keep going on about how they're a Christian, do they? They just don't mention it. So if they repeatedly say it constantly, it's not very easy to believe, because that's not the way it works, you know. So anyway, all of those people are disinformation agents. I absolutely guarantee you should be very careful around them. They could get you in a lot of trouble. Okay, right, well, I don't know if I'm going to leave this video up because I'm a bit tired. Maybe, you know, sometimes things come out really shit when you're tired, don't they? Okay, anyway, thanks very much. I've been Tom Carhill. Any comments or anything like that, please just send a comment. I'll get back to you. Thanks a lot. Bye now. Bye-bye.